Hello YouTube reloaders. Thanks for watching. Hornady Loader here. My standard disclaimer, I am not an employee of Hornady Manufacturing, nor do I have any interest, financially or otherwise, in the sale of Hornady products. I've been reloading for almost 35 years, and for the last 20 years I've been using Hornady equipment almost exclusively, hence the name Hornady Loader. The Hornady logo is a registered trademark of Hornady Manufacturing, Grand Island, Nebraska. Welcome to part 4 of my 4-part series on the Hornady Lock and Load Auto Progressive Press. This video will be an examination of the Hornady Control Panel. The Control Panel monitors several operations on your press. It does have a counter, so you can count how many cases you've primed or how many times you've cycled the RAM. It will check your primer level, your powder level, verify that you have a powder charge, and make sure that your primer slide is operating properly. Now you can buy two different versions of this. One is the standard version, which basically just comes with the counter and primer slide checker. The deluxe version, which I have installed, comes with the primer level, powder level, and powder charge attachments. Now the control panel is meant to mount on the mounting arm for the case feeder. If you don't have a case feeder, you can also mount it to the back of your press. Now the wiring harness that comes with it includes all the connectors for all of the various devices or sensors. It also has a power connector for an LED light. The system comes with one LED light strip, but I also have a dome light in here that goes in a hole in the center on the top, connected to it. So I can use my control panel to turn my lights on and off instead of having to have a separate light counter or light switch for each one. Now let's go through each of the various sensors and see how they work. First on the list is the counter and primer slide sensor. Now if you buy the standard version of the control panel, this is all you get. It's designed to count how many times the RAM comes down, and I've got mine set so that when I push down on the handle to prime the case, the counter will increment. So every time I prime a case, the primer goes up, or the counter goes up. The other sensor on here is the primer slide detector. Now, if you remember from part 1 of my series on the lock and load press, I mentioned that you need to keep this area clean so that the primer slide can move freely. If it gets dirty, the primer slide can get stuck in the rearward position. Let me see if I can pop it back here, like that, and then when it comes down, it will trigger the primer slide indicator, which will cause the control panel to alert you both visually with a red light there on the primer slide and audibly with a tone. So this part of it is you really can't use with any other press. It's designed specifically for the Hornady lock and load press. So this won't do you any good if you've got a Dillon or RCBS or something like that. Next, we have the primer indicator. Now, if you remember from part 1 of my series here on the lock and load press, you'll remember my little primer indicator that goes down into the into the primer tube. What we do here is we add this attachment to the top of the primer tube, and we replace the primer indicator with my handy little flag with the primer indicator that comes with the control panel kit. It has a weight on the top here to help move it down, and as the primer indicator goes down, as the primers come out of the bottom of the tube, this weight will come down and trigger this switch, which will give us a visual and audio indicator that the primer level is getting low. It'll trigger right around five or six primers left in the tube, so you know that you're running low on primers and you need to add some more. Next, we have the powder indicator to let us know when the powder in our powder measure is getting low. Basically, what we do is we replace the cap that goes on the top of the powder hopper with the cap that comes with the powder with the control panel. Now it has a little platform there that sits on top of the powder, and as the powder level goes down, this rod will go down, and then this piece here will trigger the switch that's sitting on top of the hopper cap, and when it gets down to a point where the cap here comes in contact with the switch, we then get an indicator that our powder level is low. And that's really all there is to the powder indicator. Very simple. It takes only a few seconds to install. The most interesting device that comes with the control panel is the powder charge indicator. Now this replaces the powder cop that we've been using, and this will actually stop the operation of the RAM. It'll stop the RAM dead in its tracks if you have an improper powder charge. Now I'm going to take a case and put it in the shell plate here, and I'll go ahead and cycle it, and we'll get a correct powder charge. And then as it comes up into the powder charge indicator, everything works just fine. However, let me go ahead and run an empty case through it. I'll take the powder out of this case. And put it back in completely empty. Now when it comes up, it stops it right in its tracks. And we get an indicator here telling us that the powder charge is incorrect. Now that's if we have a zero powder charge. In other words, the case is empty. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double charge this case. So here I'll bring it up, get one powder charge, and then I'll double stroke it here so that we get a double charge in this case. As you can see, you can see that in the video, that case is way too full of powder. Now when we come up, same thing happens. It'll stop the RAM dead in its tracks, and we get a powder charge indicator telling us there's something wrong with the powder charge. In this case, of course, it's double charged. So, not only does the powder charge indicator let us know that there's a bad powder charge, but it will actually stop the press so that you can't continue until you fix the problem. Okay, and those are all the stages of the control panel that it checks. We've got the counter, the primer level, the powder level, the powder charge, and the powder slide indicator. Of course, we have a mute button here too if you want to just turn off the the audio signal and rely on just the visuals, or if you have a problem, the thing starts beeping, and while you're fixing the problem, you can go ahead and mute it. Now, one thing I want to mention about the control panel wiring here. One thing I really do not like about the way that Hornady did this is, see if I can get this in focus here, the wires that go into these little plugs that plug into the indicators are very, very weak. The wires are extremely thin, and if you pull too hard on these wires, they will break. In fact, I've got a broken one in here that I've got to repair on the primer slide plug in here. So you got to be very, very careful when plugging these wires in and out of the various sensors. They will break in a heartbeat. Like I said, they're extremely thin wires, so you have to be extremely careful with the plugging them in and pulling them out. Okay, so that's all there is to the control panel. What we'll do now is go ahead and continue our loading of the 45 auto, and we'll use the control panel to monitor everything. Okay, so before I get started with my session here, I'm going to hit the reset button to reset my counter back to 0. The power switch basically acts as the reset. If I hold the power switch in, or the power button, for a few seconds, it'll turn off, and then I can hold the power switch in again, and it'll turn back on. Okay. And one other thing I should mention about the powder charge indicator, this will only work for pistol cartridges. The tip on the bottom of the powder charge indicator is too wide to fit in a case, say a 223 case, or even a 308 case. So it's really only for pistol cartridges. The powder cop really is only for pistol cartridges as well, although there is a way to make the powder cop work with rifle cartridges. So let's go ahead and start our process here. I need to put my case feeder activation rod back on here, so it'll feed cases. And we start the process. Rather than do prime, do a new case. Prime that one. Now I can check the powder charge indicator, but unlike the powder cop, I don't have to rely on just my visual sighting of the how far up the thing goes. It is checking all that for me electronically. Got my bullet feeder working. See, a case didn't drop that time. Sometimes the case feeder will hook up and not drop a case, but that's okay. The powder measure and the bullet feeder are case activated, so if a case doesn't enter the die, then the bullet is dropped, and I just lost my bullet tube. So let's go ahead and finish up what I've got here. Okay, and there you have it. The control panel basically gives me a little reassurance that I have, powder charge, I have primers in the primer tube, and so on, so that I don't end up with a cartridge with no primer or a cartridge with a bad powder charge, that sort of thing. And that's all there is to the control panel. Works great. It's basically, relatively inexpensive, but, depends on whether you buy the standard or the deluxe. The powder measure, the powder level indicator will work with other manufacturers' presses or powder measures. The primer indicator will work, I think, with Dillon or RCBS. You have to call Hornady to get the appropriate part number for non-Hornady presses. The powder charge indicator will work with other presses. The only thing really that's not designed to work with other presses is the counter and the primer slide indicator. That's all for this video. I hope you liked it, maybe even learned something. If so, please click the like button. Maybe even subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and happy reloading.